while many names have been floated as a potential replacement for Joe Biden, I think I could find somebody who's much better. Joining us right now live is a newly announced presidential candidate of the Democratic Party. She's a progressive, but there's a catch for all of our Republican and Libertarian listeners. She's pro-life. Her name is Terrisa Bukovinac, and she's joining us live right now. Good God, I had to say that name so many times to make sure I got that right. Good morning, Terrisa. How are you?
Hi, Austin. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, so why run for president?
Well, in 2019 and 2020, I traveled to every single Democratic national debate with the Democrats for Life of America banner, demanding representation in the Democratic Party for pro-life people. The party has become so extreme on the abortion issue and is essentially misrepresenting the majority of Democrats who oppose at least abortion in elective cases in the later trimesters. And then you may recall last year, I, along with my good friend and colleague Lauren Handy, recovered the remains of 115 abortion victims outside a Washington, D.C. abortion center. 5 of those babies were extremely late term, past viability. It was one of the most horrific experiences of my life. And having these 2 experiences, knowing that I couldn't go through another election cycle demanding representation, without me myself willing to actually step into the ring and be that representation if no one else is willing to do it, and seeing these victims up close and personal has certainly, it's an experience that I can't come back from, and I am committed to showing the American people what elective late-term abortion does to our most vulnerable Americans. And so as a federal candidate, any FCC TV station must run the ads that of any federal candidate uncensored. And so I'm going to use this platform to show the American people what abortion does.
God bless you, Terrisa. We're grateful for people like that out there. And while we do sometimes sniff at the bipartisan compromises that occur in Washington, D.C., because usually bipartisan just means that they're working together to screw the American people, I could see somebody like you doing a lot of good in Washington, D.C., even if we disagree on perhaps some of the other issues. But we can get into that a little bit later. You are running for president of the United States, though, and when it comes to a federal candidate, you do have to answer the same kinds of questions that any presidential candidate might get. What are your thoughts on the continuing shoveling of taxpayer dollars over to Ukraine?
Well, this is a campaign about abortion. I am not running to try to win the presidency. I am running to disrupt on the issue of abortion. I'm a progressive. Of course, I support Ukraine, but that isn't an issue that is really going to be a part of this campaign. This is about representing young millennial people like myself. There's no other millennial in the race right now. I am representing where most millennials are politically, which is to the left of the left. And I think, my opponents, Marianne Williamson, RFK, Biden, they're all, 70 or older or close to it, and certainly considering themselves to be moderates to some degree. But I'm not. I'm a progressive like the others of my generation.
Okay, so it's a single issue campaign, then, you might say.
I think that my opponents will always try to say abortion is a single issue, but the reality is abortion isn't a single issue. It is deeply tied to some of the worst problems that America has. I'm talking about this from a multi-issue standpoint. I think it's important that we strengthen unions, that we expand affordable housing, and that we are addressing a racist criminal justice system, because these are all funneling into this genocide, which to me, there is nothing more important in this nation today than ending the mass murder of our children.
What's it like being a progressive that's pro-life in a progressive movement that's largely pro-abortion? I mean, it's kind of like being a libertarian in the Republican Party to some extent, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely comes with its challenges, and just being a pro-lifer in a leftist circle is extremely difficult. It can be kind of isolating, but the whole point of this campaign is to give representation to people like me so that they can come out of the woodwork so I don't have to feel alone. It's statistically, most Democrats agree with me, at least in the later trimesters, but where are they? Their voices have been silenced And their position has been so stigmatized that if you even suggest that you're kind of maybe thinking there might be an issue with late term abortion, that you're basically labeled a Republican. And I'm just not going to stand for that. There's no way I see us being able to end abortion in America until we can break the toxic relationship between the abortion industrial complex and the Democratic Party. And Republicans alone can't do that. It is going to take leftists from within our own party in order to make that change.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to progressive activist Terrisa Bukovinac, and she's joining us now to talk about her campaign for president of the United States. She's running as a Democrat against Joe Biden on the issue of abortion. She calls herself a progressive pro-lifer, and we're talking to her about her campaign right now. So tell us, where do you get your conception of life? Why are you a progressive who is also pro-life? How did you arrive at the position of being pro-life?
Well, I've always been really sensitive to animal rights. I There was someone in my early life who would challenge me on that and say, "How can you care about the dolphins if you don't care about unborn children being killed in the womb?" And I thought, "What unborn children? It's just a clump of cells." And it was really seeing the victims of abortion that helped me to realize that maybe there was something wrong there. But I was a Christian, and I believed that babies went to heaven after they died, and that in the end, God was going to right all the wrongs. And so, like many other injustices in the world, I prayed about it and just kind of hoped for the best. But I still considered myself pro choice until I met other secular people like me who were pro life. And actually, Austin, you were kind of a big part of that, because in the years that you were running for president, I was just floored to know another secular. I don't know where you stand on that now, but at the time, you were running as a secular
Secular
pro lifer.
pro-lifer. Hmm.
It was so exciting for me. It was representation that gave me the confidence to come out and say, "Yeah, I'm also secular and I am pro-life," and that really kind of
Fascinating.
changed.
That drives people bonkers, on
Yeah.
both left and right, because they have to believe that the reason why you see, right, life as an intrinsic right has to have some basis in a moral system that was cooked up a couple of thousand years ago, right? As if there aren't some very good modern scientific reasons to argue for the life of the child in the womb. I saw my buddy Robbie over on Rumble right now, who was talking about, he knew for sure that it was a life when he saw his granddaughter or his daughter, I think, the ultrasound in the womb. I mean, we are actually talking about the lives of human. I mean, if you're not pro-life, then you're pro-death. I mean, like, how can we have a policy? How can you say run for office and say that, oh yeah, we need to cull the amount of humans on this planet? But that's what most progressives believe. And I mean, we probably don't agree when it comes to things like global warming or climate change, but we probably agree that it's problematic that the left uses climate change as an excuse to tell people to kill their babies, right?
Oh, absolutely. The left is totally complicit and literal collaborators and promoters of a genocide, and trying to cover that up with some kind of like progressive viewpoint. It doesn't work. Real progress is anti-fascist, which means you have to oppose mass widespread child killing. For me, when I lost my faith, it made me kind of view my life in a different way. I thought, wow, I'm not here because my life is willed by God. I'm here because no one interrupted my life cycle and killed me. And I have this 1 in 4 trillion chance of even coming into an existence to have this incredible um, conscious experience of the universe. Who has the right to take that from us? And if we're carving out a special place for human non-persons, well, that's something that's been done exclusively throughout history to lethally discriminate against entire groups of human beings. That's not progress.
Yeah, my one of my things when you talked about clumps of cells a little bit earlier reminded me what I used to say when people would say, "Oh, well, it's just clumps of cells." But if you were speaking to a group of typical secular leftists who are pro-choice, if you were to say, "Hey, did you know that they found clusters of cells on Mars?" They would be like, "Oh my God, they found life on Mars." Okay, well, if it's life on Mars, then why isn't a cluster of cells life in the womb? They don't even see their own hypocrisy, do they?
No, not at all. And I love that meme. I'm so glad you brought it up. But I think that that's what's helped me to realize that this is political, that this isn't just about what people believe, that that people believe what they believe because of their politics, not the other way around. They don't pick their politics because of what they believe. And so I realized that this isn't just a cultural fight for me, that I am going to not only need to be an activist, but I'm going to need to I'm going to need to address this through a political lens and show people, give them the representation kind of that you gave me, and show them, look, if you're really going to be a progressive, if you're really going to be a leftist, then you have to consider that this might not be in line with your values.
What's the reaction been to your announcement of your campaign so far?
Well, I've been incredibly surprised by how widely the announcement has been covered. I was hoping to get obviously some coverage when I run the ads, but seeing the coverage on the forefront is very exciting. My opponents haven't really covered it, which is interesting. I thought for sure, like Ms. Magazine, Jezebel would love to draw attention to this, but so far, not yet. But I'm really
Mm.
just hoping to cause as much trouble for the Democratic Party on this issue during this election cycle as I can, and to also put some pressure on the Republicans to do the right thing and to support a national ban and to recognize that we are fighting a genocide here. And the way that they're trying to roll back and say, oh, it's a state's issue is completely wrong. And I want to have an influence on both sides.
So I love this. I support your mission. I mean, it's great. I love that you're out there fighting for this issue and you're taking the Democrats to task, but you're also calling out Republicans. I know that I said something like this to you before, back in the radio days when we had you on the show, but it still holds true, and it's a little tongue in cheek perhaps, but populism has really been a big movement within the Republican Party ever since the rise of Donald Trump. And most of the views that political populists within the Republican Party hold these days are progressive views. When I talk about progressivism, I'm not talking necessarily about the social issues behind them. I'm talking about progressive economic views, right? Our Senator Josh Hawley is out on the picket line with the United Auto Workers supporting the unions in this strike. Many of the populists in the Republican Party that have taken it over, like J.D. Vance of Ohio and others, they are also progressive when it comes to economic policies, for example, right? They're more like Teddy Roosevelt progressives, right? And you're more FDR progressive, I guess you might say, to some extent. But at the end of the day, they're still progressives. Now, I am not a progressive. I'm very anti-progressive in my political views and my social views. Right, I'm very politically, you might say, libertarian. But the progressive Republicans, who are also pro-life like you have a lot more in common, for example, with Josh Hawley than you do with me, right? Because of our economic views and things like that. You have more in common with J.D. Vance than you do with me, for example. I hate to say this, but it's probably true. You actually probably have more in common with Donald Trump than I do, for example. So after this presidential campaign is over and you've Tulsi Gabbard the Democrats, why not just join the Republican Party? Because it's progressive Republicans who are holding it anyway.
Well, and you make some good points. I do think that we are seeing some more progressive policies coming from some Republicans, and I certainly applaud that. I think that's fantastic. I think that that's going to be the best way that we're going to address the abortion issue in this country. And as you know, I have allies across the Republican Party. I've had to. I haven't had much choice in terms of allies on the abortion issue. But when I'm looking at the landscape of the issue of abortion in America, I don't see the Republicans being able to help me in this crusade. This is about changing the Democratic Party. And overall, it is authentic to who I am and the values that I've had. I've been working in the pro-life movement for nearly a decade now. I founded 2 pro-life organizations, Pro-Life San Francisco and Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. And this is my calling in the pro-life movement, is to be my true leftist self. And if I was going to become a Republican, it would have been a long time ago. It doesn't align with my values. And this is where I see the battle need to be fought.
Sure, I got it. Terrisa Bukovinac, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners or plug before we let you go today?
Yes, please. Thank you for asking. Please go to my website, bfp2024.com. That stands for Bukovinac for President. please check out my website. If you want the American people to see what abortion does, the reality of abortion extremism that is emanating from the Democratic Party, regardless of your political affiliation, please consider a gift to this campaign. It is only made possible through donors like you.
Yes, Terrisa Bukovinac, thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for fighting the good fight for life. We appreciate you very much, and we hope to have you back. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Austin.
Thank you very much.